We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin. An unreleased build of Beta 1.2 has been discovered by the OmniArchive community and is now available to play. This internal development version was never intended to be released to the public, created only for making the Minecraft trailer for the launch of the game on the Xperia Play. Some of you may be wondering, what's an Xperia Play? Me too. I'm far too old for this newfangled mumbo-jumbo. Coming up after the break, The Odd Couple. Could a blaze in a snow golem really make it work?
Newly discovered version. We've got to try this out.
Say they'll do whatever it takes. Welcome back to Minecraft The Journey with me, BugmanCX. This is the Let's Play series exploring the history of this game through survival Minecraft. And today, we're going backwards, back to Beta 1.2, to explore something rather unique. The year was 2011, and Mojang was planning its expansion of Minecraft to other platforms, notably the version which would eventually become Minecraft Pocket Edition and go on to become what we know today as Bedrock Edition. This had been in the works for some time. Notch's first mention of porting Minecraft to Android was as early as 2009, right at the earliest beginnings of Minecraft. The first version of Minecraft Pocket Edition would be launched on the Xperia Play. We haven't really talked about Pocket Edition before because this series focuses around the Java version of the game, and some early builds of the Java version were pretty wild, and occasionally some of the development builds would crop up that were only really intended for internal use. Like Beta 1.6 Test Build 3, which was discovered years later, and this version spawned in chests full of all of the available blocks and items. Or how sometimes the developers would forget to disable certain debug features, like spawning in tools and beds in Beta 1.3. The reason we're able to explore this is because this special build of Beta 1.2 was a fork of the Beta 1.2_02 Java version, and by looking inside of the jar file, we can see that it was built on May 17th, 2011, some 2 months before the first Pocket Edition version would be released. And this version is quite different to other versions, and there's a lot to explore which we'll go through today. Nerd alert! One of the interesting, unique technical points is that this version was built with Java version 6, whereas all of the other versions around this time were being built and released under Java 5. This version also has unobfuscated code. Obfuscation is typically used to disguise the original code functions when it's decompiled, making it difficult to understand and reverse engineer. The obfuscation means that modders needed to invest time in testing and mapping out all of the obfuscated functions to understand their purposes so that they could be used for modding. This also meant that modders had to create their own naming conventions once they discovered what each function did. But with this unobfuscated version, all of the original function names are clearly visible, meaning the modding framework can now use these functions with their original names. Because it was an internal development version, the code also contains a lot more unused functions, which are normally removed prior to release, the sort of things used by developers to test and record video footage, and it even contains some unused game features which were never completed. But what was this version for? The development version was built especially to generate the trailer for Pocket Edition, so let's jump into this version and explore what's going on in a lot more detail. As soon as we load the game, it's immediately generating terrain, and then we land here, in this world, with this structure in front of us, whatever this is. And as you'll see, moving around me right now are some human mobs, and these are here to complete the structure. They're just going to walk up to the structure and start replacing blocks, placing blocks, pillaring up to all of the areas that they need to in order to finish this construction. If you can work out what it is, let me know. I mean, we'll find out soon enough, assuming this thing doesn't get covered in wooden planks by the time they're finished with it. Let's just observe them for a bit and see what they do. Remember that this is just a prototype to test the AI building capabilities of these mobs, so don't expect this to be perfect. As you can see, there are all sorts of problems with this. They have to use these wooden planks to pillar themselves up to get from place to place. They end up pillaring up through the structure and destroying the structure along the way, only to have to go back and then replace those blocks again afterwards. It's all a little bit strange. For the trailer, when the mobs do the building, which we'll see when we explore the trailer a little bit later on, you'll see that it's far more polished. So this is probably a very early prototype of this whole process. You might have also noticed that these mobs will take damage. Just like the old creepers, they'll explode whenever their health reaches 0. And that's quite interesting because that explosion will result in some of these blocks that they're supposed to be placing from disappearing around them. Not very smart, are they? How they just pillar up inside the existing structure and destroy all the blocks that are supposed to be there, only to have to come back later and then replace them all again. Yeah, remember, this is just an early prototype. There are usually only 4 of these mobs in the world at any one time working on this structure, so whenever they do explode and then get replaced, you'll see them marching on towards the structure. New ones have spawned in to replace them, and they'll go on continuing to build, build, and build. Now, if you have managed to work out what they're actually building, then I congratulate you, because right now it's covered in these wooden planks. What they're actually building is an upright version of the Xperia Play. To the very top of the screen, you'll see the glass part, and down the bottom, which is currently hidden by a lot of these wooden planks, you'll see these iron blocks, obsidian blocks, and there are some diamond ore blocks in there as well, and those represent the controls. This is just a very simple version of what they will eventually have in place for the final trailer, but again, it's an early prototype, so it's just here for testing. I have noticed that these mobs will clean up after themselves. I've noticed that when there are no more blocks to place, they tend to go around and try and clean up the existing blocks, but it's not very good. They need to place more blocks to get the height to get up to the blocks to remove them, so they end up adding more blocks than they remove, and it's just a mess. And sometimes they pillar up back through the structure, having to go back and then rebuild the thing all over again. So again, for a prototype, it's not too bad. It's doing the job, but just really inefficiently. Look at this, it's beautiful, isn't it? Now, there are a couple of interesting things about this version, which I mentioned earlier. The first is that when you load the game, there's no menu, so you just launch straight into this world with this structure here. Also, the inventory seems to be disabled, so if I press the I key, which it's currently mapped to, no inventory will come up, and that means that if I collect blocks like this, I can access them in my hotbar, and I can place them and do whatever I want. I can break blocks as well, but I just can't craft anything because I can't access the inventory, and I can only access the blocks that are actually in my hotbar. The other interesting thing is that this world always spawns in to this world seed, and this structure seems to get placed into the world after the terrain generates. And I want to show you something interesting about that, because if I go back out to save and quit to title, because there is no title screen, it just goes straight back into the world, although this time there's no structure there. So these mobs will just walk across to this location where it's supposed to exist, and they'll just start constructing it, but this time from scratch. Because of the limitations on that development version of 1.2_02, this is a modded version of the game, modded by Blizzard Fur Max, and you can find a copy of this mod in the Omni Archive Discord. And this mod opens up the game a little bit more. As you can see, we have our normal menu back. You might notice something a little bit odd though. Minfcraft. Minfcraft? This self-building logo here should build the word Minecraft, but for some reason it's missing a couple of blocks here, and we just get Minfcraft. Okay, whatever, I'm not going to complain. But now that we have access to the menu, we can do a few more things. In single player, we can now access different worlds, and when I load one of these worlds, it will do world terrain normally, like this. And when I load into the world, that structure will also appear. The Steves also appear, and they'll go off and build it just as they normally would. Now you might notice that this is a completely different world seed, and that's because when you generate the worlds in this fashion, It will generate based on a random world seed, and the Steves will just pour on in and do their work. You might also notice a couple of other things off in the background there and somewhere else around here, over there, and we'll come on to that in just a moment. But this gives us a great opportunity to observe the Steves in action properly. I've also added a mod in here, which is the single player commands mod, and that will allow me to do things like turn on fly mode. So now I can just fly around the structure like this and really observe exactly what they're doing. So this should allow us to have a little bit more fun. The other thing I can do with single player commands is I can turn on instant mine, and instant mine is great because I can now come up to the structure and just break these blocks as if I was in creative mode. And this should give us a great view of exactly what's going on, because as we saw from the time lapse before, the structure itself seems to get blocked by all of the Steves, or the human mobs, I should say, placing down all of these blocks. So what we did observe is that these wood plank blocks here seem to get filled into the structure. The basic structure looks a little bit like this, and these are actually blocks that need to be placed in by those mobs. But up here there were some air blocks, and so it looks like the game has filled in the blanks by pre-placing some of these wooden planks. Now, assuming these silly mobs, they're not very smart, are they? They're just over here trying to get there and not really doing a very good job of it. I think they struggle a little bit with the water, but we'll let them continue on and do what they're doing. Where was I? Right. Now, the weird thing about this structure is that it's not a complete model of the Xperia Play. It seems to be half of an Xperia Play, in that there's a little bit of the glass screen here, but it's not entirely finished, and half of the control panel here, but again, not entirely finished. Again, maybe it was because this was just a proof of concept for this self-building autonomous mob feature. Or maybe it was intended to be half an Xperia Play so that a player could come in and fill in the rest of it themselves. I'm not really sure. But I love to be able to fly around and see exactly what's going on. Now let's see if we can get a couple of these. Look, you're really struggling in the water there. They really don't like the water. Let's see if we can free up some space for you to get in here. And see if you will actually build something. I want to break the blocks and see what they do to replace the blocks. So let's clear. Oh, it's so high. That's the problem, isn't it? The other thing is that this seems to generate at approximately the same Y height each time, I think. And so let's see what you do. If I break a whole bunch of these blocks around you, they should just pop up again and just begin replacing exactly what I broke. No? Come on, do it. Yeah, there you go. There we go. Replacing all those blocks. So really, I'm just making a diamond farm here by breaking all these blocks and turning them into diamonds each time, and that mob will continuously replace them. So that's just a really interesting, different way of looking at Minecraft. Who knew that the early versions of Minecraft had self-building built in? And this is it. The finished structure. I've removed all of the wood blocks that were surrounding it so we can see it in all of its glory, and now you know what I mean when I say it's half of an Xperia Play. You can imagine that this is supposed to be a full screen like this. This is the left controller, here is a pad in the middle, and here is a missing right controller. So it's almost like this was a puzzle intended to be finished. And speaking of finished, this is the finished product of the Xperia Play trailer for Pocket Edition. You can see these Steves are building an Xperia Play device layer by layer. They're just building out the circuit board there, followed by, that looks like where the screen would be. And just layer by layer, it's slowly transforming into the finished product. There we are, we're putting the glass of the screen in, and then finally we should see the control panel. And so what we saw on screen earlier kind of resembles this, I suppose. I mentioned that this version included a few extras and unfinished features, so let's look around at a few things. First, the game launches into something called Secret Mode, and this bypasses the title screen and triggers these NPC builders. Xperia Mode places the player at these coordinates each time the world's loaded. At this point in the game's development, custom world names weren't allowed, and you were stuck with just World 1 through World 5, or you would be normally if you were able to run multiple levels. But when the game launches into Secret Mode, it'll actually save the world files in a directory called Secret Level. But it's only thanks to the modded version of the game where we're able to explore more of the features hidden in this version. In the modded version of the game with access to single-player commands, I'm able to spawn in these NPC builder mobs, and in the game they're called Secret Builder, and one should have appeared right behind me. There you are. And as you can see, it's got a pickaxe just like the others, but when I spawn them in this way, they don't seem to contribute to the build. They just wander around aimlessly like a pig or a chicken or something. They probably have very basic AI. But there's another version of this mob also in the game. That is called Secret Builder 2. And when this one spawns in, you can see it has no pickaxe, but it's constantly punching the air as if it's trying to break blocks. And to be honest, I'm not really clear on what the purpose of this second mob is. Again, probably something just completely unfinished. These strange little brick cuboid structures appear all over the landscape. There's another one over here, and you can see more of them off there over in the distance. These are houses. I guess they were an initial prototype for randomly placing structures across the terrain, but in the game's code, they're known as the house feature. And if we have a look inside, you'll see these are just hollow cuboid shapes, nothing much to them at all. Let's head over to these. You can see even more of them. There are so many of them all around the place here, all of different varying shapes. And inside, there we go, we can see absolutely nothing. Perhaps these were an early version before Notch was going to implement the town code, which would come much, much later. But early prototypes are early prototypes. Scattered around the coastlines of the world, you might run into some of these. These are coral clusters. Coral was first suggested to Notch back in May of 2009 by Solarblade, and this was right back when Notch was first figuring out which blocks would even be in the game. And on June 29th, 2010, Notch tried adding corals to the game, but he failed, saying, "I tried adding corals, but it's really hard to draw a single block that looks like corals, since it's really more about crazy amounts of variation and diversity. But I do know that the corals will have tiny fish particles around them." The next day, a new version of InfDev was released, and although the corals were not included in this version, the texture for them was. So by adding this texture to the Beta 1.2 development version, the code uses it properly, and when it generates corals, it uses the appropriate color values depending on the coordinates of the coral. Having a closer look at these corals, you can see some side effects. There's a Z-fighting issue going on here, which means that two textures are fighting to occupy the same pixel space at the same time. And the reason for that is that these coral blocks are actually slightly larger than a normal block, which you can see here against the sand. Oh, and it causes you to fall into them as well, which is most unusual. Let's try and get out of there. I can break these blocks, and when I break them, I can pick up the coral block like this. And you can see from the inventory here that it has no texture applied, and that's because the texture is applied by the game depending on where in the world the block happens to be placed. You can also see behind me here that there are a couple of coral blocks generated here underwater, which is where you'd probably expect to find them, to be honest. Placing them down like this in a big grid within the world just gives you a general idea of the variation of colors used and how randomized the palette is. One of the final and possibly most interesting features about this version is a developer mode that Notch would have used when generating all sorts of different videos for the game. If you go into the options menu, you'll notice this option called Options Flyby currently turned off. It's not possible to toggle this within the options menu here, but we can do it in the options.txt file. When enabled, this does something rather special. At the moment, I don't have any hands on my keyboard. My player is just surfing across the terrain here at some speed, as you can see. If I press F1, I should remove my hand from view and just allow the game to float over the terrain here. It's a little bit jerky from time to time as it's generating chunks and doing who knows what. This flyby mode saves the game in a directory called flyby, a special save directory, and for each frame that I'm moving forward, it's also generating one of those 5 megabyte TGA screenshot files that we experimented with around this version of the game. And that's a lot of data to be saving to disk. Also, right now you can see it's extremely fast. I'm not sure how it paces itself, but it's not really getting very nice vistas at the moment. It's just getting chunk generation, chunk generation, chunk generation. But this is how Notch made his flyby videos. We have returned to our usual survival world, and I would like to thank you for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed it, then please let me know in the comments below. You can also hit the subscribe button to support my channel. You can hit the super thanks button if you want to donate. You can join Patreon to support me on a regular basis. You can join my Discord in the links down below as well. Special thanks to the OmniArchive community for obtaining this release and making it available to the public. Oh, a skeleton nearly got me. And a wonderful special thank you to my amazing patrons for supporting me. You're all amazing. Oh, that was nearly deadly. But I think we ought to call it an episode, so until the next one, this has been Bugman CX. You've been watching Minecraft: The Journey. Bye-bye.